Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to UUCGT. We are a Unitarian church, and we try to live our Unitarian Universalist principles. We welcome all who come here and assume good intentions. We encourage all voices to speak and willingly listen for understanding. We lift up work for justice and equality in areas including race, gender, and sexuality, and we extend compassion to all. So today we have invited speakers. So we have JoAnne Cook and Paul Raphael, who's going to be here any minute. And then we also have a person back with Marty. Do you want to introduce him?
This is Jim Coates, and many people will probably know Jim Coates or knew him in past years. And we come today really to hear Paul and JoAnne. And Jim and I have been active with the Human Nature School, and Paul had done some just extremely important cultural trainings for us from the Grandparents Band. So a nice time to hear grandfather stories today.
Okay. Do we have any visitors today? Okay. If you're comfortable, we'd like you to stand up and introduce yourselves. We've got a mic that you could take. So, yeah.
My name is Richard Kent. I'm a member of the congregation in Farmington Hills, Michigan, and visiting this region for a week, staying in Alden area, and looking forward to watching the soccer game this afternoon if I can find a good place to go and watch it. Bar, pubs, recommendations from anyone? England versus Spain at 3 o'clock. Anybody? Nobody knows about it? Okay.
I'm Beth Bowman. He's from Livonia. I'm from Plymouth, and we're up here for a week, and I accompany him to his church wherever he travels. I usually go with him, and I like it here already.
Great. Okay.
Hi, my name is Shanna Banana, and this is my mom, Ruth Ann, and we're here with my Aunt Susie. So thank you for welcoming us.
Hi, my name is Judy Stetner, pronouns she, her, and I bring greetings from Tree of Life Unitarian Universalist congregation in McHenry, Illinois. We are visiting this weekend, all of us. I brought my dad, Steve Decker, here. He used to attend this congregation when he lived here in Traverse City. And I'm here with my husband, Mark, and our family friend, Judy Whitaker. So 2 Judys for the price of 1.
Great. Anybody else? Okay. Well, we're so glad to have visitors come to us in the summertime. It's great. Okay, so if anybody wants to put a joy and concern down over there where those lights are, you could just write it in the book, and I will tell everybody else later on. Okay. I guess that's about it. So, well, let the service begin. And I am going to light the chalice. This is one of our rituals that we like to do.
If you would please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing hymn number 326 in your gray hymnal, Let All the Beauty We Have Known. Let all the beauty we have known illuminate our hearts and minds. Rejoice in wonders daily shown, in faith and joy and love that binds. We celebrate with singing hearts the loveliness of sky and earth, the inspiration of the arts, the miracle of every birth. Let life's music and its poetry surround and bless us through our days. For these we sing in harmony, together giving thanks and praise.
Okay, now it's time for the offering. And Chris, where are the baskets?
The ones we're passing, we will pass. The ones that are in the back of the room are on the pedestal by the door.
Okay,
It's in the order of service.
okay, thank you very much. So Anne Marie will play a song. Are you going to play something? No? Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't. Okay, some of the baskets will go to the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa. They're brown baskets, and they will be at the entrance of the sanctuary. That's totally wrong, but. Okay, now I'll turn it over to you, JoAnne.
Jap, everyone. Bujun and Doi Magani Du, Wabanase Kwe and Dajnakas, Ginu and Dodem, Ottawa and Nishnabi Kwe and Dao, Kichu Kwe Dang and Don Jaba, Nisingaye Gwen Dajimadeo, Jarganashi Monajana. So, good morning, everyone. Happy to be here with you. Paul is on his way, so he will be here soon. This morning, what we wanted to share with you are what we call the 7 grandfather teachings. And these teachings came to the Anishinaabeg to give us principles that we should live by. In our creation story, which tells us how we came to be here on the earth and who we are as Anishinaabe, these principles were given to us because in our humanness at times, we forgot or we became too boastful, or our ego became too big, and we needed to be able to remember who we are and where we came from. And so this morning, that's what I'm going to share. I'm going to read some of them, and to give you just a little bit of what I'm talking about. And then when Paul gets here, So Paul and I have worked together many years. We can say now it's been over 30 years. And so we've done various cultural presentations, and this is one of the ones that we do together. So I'm going to go ahead and read them, and then what I want to do is then share a little bit about what each one means and how we use them in our daily life. And then we're going to open it up for questions, because we like to have a dialogue, and in the sharing of culture, it helps because, you know, we all have our teachings, our way of life, our family traditions, and our community traditions, and so this is a part of ours. The first one is love. A definition is, to love self is not selfish expression of love, rather a basic love and respect for oneself. Thus, loving oneself becomes a positive precondition to loving one's neighbor through respect. This love is not in any way restrictive or exclusive, but embracing all. The second one is respect. This practice is to give respect unconditionally to all living beings. Once again, as with love, respect for oneself is a precondition of that to which you are able to give respect. If a person does not have self-respect, they have no respect to give. The third is knowledge. Learned knowledge is earned knowledge and is a gift to keep forever. Accumulated knowledge is continually gained through experience, which is the best teacher. All knowledge is worthwhile, but with the foundation of Anishinaabe culture and spiritual knowledge, plus the understanding gained before birth, this knowledge is made strong. The fourth is bravery. Bravery is not related to war, conflict, or combat, nor is it the expression of blind anger, jealousy, or vengefulness. Bravery is facing and dealing with an adverse situation and resolving it. Not by forcing a victory, but instead the individual is recognizing their skills and living up to their responsibility on behalf of the community. Through bravery comes the acceptance of responsibility, self-respect, and self-love. The fifth is truth. Truth must lie at the heart of things. If truth is not at the heart of things written or said or done, then it is difficult to correct or change at a later time to reflect reality. In Anishinaabeg teachings, there are two truths. One is evident truth, and the other is truth by faith. Both are accepted as truth by Anishinaabeg. Evident truth is, an example would be leaves grow on the tree. That's something that we can see and understand. The other, the truth by faith, is that we, as Anishinaabeg, believe that our mother, the earth is our mother. And for us as Anishinaabeg, that's our truth by faith. The sixth is honesty. It means to accept and recognize honesty without compromise or conditions. Honesty can be clouded by half-truths in order to be more palatable or agreeable by a large number of people. Combining truth with honesty is to know our strengths and accept our weaknesses, and in conjunction with bravery, act to change the weaknesses that are causing us problems. Honesty within ourselves is honesty lived. The seventh is humility. It is not passivity or weakness. Humility is confidence through self-knowledge, gain knowledge, and experiences without overconfidence. A humble person sees the truth of their own abilities and respects the abilities of others. Relinquishing leadership to others of greater ability when necessary is an act of humility, as is bravely accepting responsibility when needed. I want to share that these written 7 grandfather teachings, they are longer in length, but we've just taken a few sentences of each. The author that wrote these for us was Edward Benton Benet, or Budwaywoodin Benet Siabun, that he gave us permission, Paul and I, to go out and to share these 7 grandfather teachings and to provide copies if people had requested them. But as I talked a little bit earlier, the principles, the 7 grandfather teachings came to us at a time when Anishinaabeg had kind of started to forget and to not respect, to do our ceremonies as we were taught. We in our part of our story is we also have a story of a flood, of when people kind of got too busy here in this physical world and forgot our spiritual life in a way. And so after that flood and the coming of the second people is when we were, part of it was that we had to remember, and we were given the various ceremonies. That is Anishinaabeg. We are part of creation and we live in the environment. That for us, that's one of our first teachers. So these principles that we strive to live by are really things in our lives. We talk about love, and in that love, right, there's 2 types of love. The love of the community, the love of people, humanity. But for us as well, it's loving that tree, the plants and the animals and the water, thanking it for the life that they give us. The other type of love is as partnership, when you have a partner. And so in that love, though, the first type is that self-love. And, that's what they talk about, that we strive to have that self-love first, because without that, we're not able to love another person in that way. And then it's the same with respect. We were always taught that, respect is maybe one of the first. Again, that self-respect that we need for ourselves to understand when you look at all of the teachings, and to have bravery and humility, to have truth and knowledge, to carry all of those, is that about respect and about learning that when you carry that respect, then you're able then to look at everyone. And we always say that all creation stories are true, that for each one of us, we have that story, that as a people, wherever you're from, the region you're from. And so for us, that's how we believe that. That's the respect that we show to everyone. And when you talk about truth and honesty, they kind of go together, and people will say or think they're the same. But really, when you're looking at truth, as I talked about, that evident truth, seeing, being able to understand it, and then having truth by faith, that you grow up in your family and you have the truth of your traditions and the truth of your family and your way of life. And then when you're, out in the world and looking at the way the world operates, and talking like nature, and you understand it, that's the truth, that's what we can see and understand. And then our spiritual life, whether it's religious or spiritual, those stories that you grow up and understand and believe, that's your truth. Honesty is, being able to look and see and understand it, because you can change the truth to fit that. You can make it sound a little bit better than what it really is, but is it really honest? And that's kind of the difference between, truth and honesty. And when we talk about bravery, it's really knowing yourself, being able to know yourself first, because then you're able then to take on challenges. Sometimes, when you're asked to do something and you're like, I don't feel ready, but, someone says, oh, yes, you are, I can see it, and we might question ourselves, but, that's bravery, or being able to, look, maybe speak out about something, and, and you're a little nervous about doing it. But bravery means really knowing that, And, you know, it isn't about forceful, you know, trying to get what you want and using that to do it. And, you know, we talk about knowledge, and we talk about all knowledge is good, whether it's a degree, whether it's learning from your community and your elders, you know, making mistakes, learning from those mistakes. You know, sometimes that's the best teacher, because without that, you might not really know some of the consequences. So all knowledge is good. Everything that you learn is good. It's just, how is it, you know, in life when you make a mistake, to love and respect yourself enough to be able to say, I did it, but I can't carry that with me throughout life. You know, that we have to learn to understand knowledge as well as sometimes leaving some of those things maybe that we've done and we're not so proud of, and then making our amends for that. So for us, when we're talking about this, and then in the end, as we move through life, the goal is to have that wisdom. Some people, you've seen them, young people have that automatically. People will say, oh, they're an old soul, or the way they carry themselves. And although we understand that as people become elders in our community, that they've lived all of those stages, they've encountered all of those teachings. And so for us, we look to the elders to be able to tell us and see it in us and to help guide us during that. So for us, our goal is to be wise, you know, that my teacher, the one who wrote this, had that wisdom. It was such a joy to be around him in the way he spoke and the way he acted, and he understood all of life, and, you know, he had things that he had to do, and he was brave in doing those, and then in recognizing in us those things that we carry as well. And so, you know, and it's an honor to be here. I'm always happy to see elders, and we call you grandmas and grandpas in our community, and it's nice to see that. It's because in that, you know, as part of these teachings, there's so much that you have to offer. All that experience, even to your grandchildren or your adopted children, because in our communities, you know, we have, I'm known as auntie to many children that are not my own. I grew up in our community that everyone was a grandma, grandpa, or auntie or uncle, and so it's nice to be here and to see all of you. And then, you know, for our young people too, you know, because a community flows in a good way when we have all of our generations with us. And you know, as adults, you know, our work, we're kind of the workers to help, you know, in terms of being that. But in our community and the way that we flow and the way we try to live those every day is a reminder, you know, a reminder to be, you know, to be on our best behavior and to make sure that we remember those. It's not always easy, and we're not always able to do it in terms of, you know, because we might get upset or we might say something, you know, and might want to take it back later. But that's all part of life, you know, that's part of being here and living that. So I think I'll stop there. I'm sorry Paul is not here. He just said he was running late, so he's running late. But yeah, I want to stop there and see if there's questions, and we'll go from there. There's more I can share, but I just want to make sure if there's questions now.
1 second. Make sure.
So with these 7 principles, are they, and I don't know if you can speak to this, are they meant, any of them, to be given more weight than the other, or is it rather key that all 7 are balanced?
Yeah, it really is about balance and about trying to incorporate each one of them, because they all are together, you know, that, and I guess maybe the first part is learning that self-love and self-respect. I mean, but, you know, but it really means trying to live each one, trying to remember those in our daily life, so, yeah.
Anybody else? Good morning. I'm thinking about what you said about bravery, and what it means to you. And I'm thinking about concepts of fear. And I'm wondering if you can give us an example in your life of when you were brave and anything that had to do with fear that was mixed into that.
Yeah. A good example I think about is, so my mom always told us that we needed to get an education. She went to Michigan State, and she went to Ferris when it was known as the Institute before it became the university. So she told us education was important because being a Anishinaabe, the way that we think and speak and believe is very different, right? When you're dealing with different cultures, the way that you understand. So she said education was important. And so I remember, that I had to go to school. Well, she wasn't really able to help me to fill out all the paperwork and to, you apply for your grants or scholarships or, different things. And I just knew that I needed to go. And so it was this, very different place for me. And so that's where I remember, it was like, okay, I have to go in and talk to people. I have to let them know I don't know. I need help. And so education it wasn't always a positive thing for Anishinaabe people because of boarding schools and different things that had happened. And so I remember that clearly, like having to go in and talk to people that didn't know me and I didn't know them, and I wasn't quite sure what to expect. And so it's kind of like that facing your fear kind of thing of, I really want to do this, so I just have to go do it.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing this with us. I was really interested in your description of truth and the two types of truth. And I wonder if you can say more about the truth that comes through faith and how that understanding comes to you or comes to others in the Anishinaabe.
Yeah, so for us, as I was sharing about our creation story, so in our story, woman was created first because our mother, the earth, was birthed. And we have this beautiful story that talks about that, how everything came to be on this earth. And so as part of that, then man was, in our story, lowered here. And so in that, it was our uncle, Wawenabuju, first Anishinaabe, and then received his name in his work. And so he traveled all of creation as part of it to name everything. And so in our story, it talks about that. It talks about we as Anishinaabe, who we are and how we're so connected to the earth. And so that's kind of an example, like the way that we believe, because I always tell people, like for us, that tree has a spirit. The animals have a purpose, that for us, the rocks, that things are alive, they carry stories. And so for us, like that's our truth. And so I always tell people I share that with you, but there's no one that'll ever tell me that's not true. So it kind of, we all have that, right? That like what we believe, and we're very strong about that, about that truth for us and how we see and understand the things in our life, like our, for us, our creator, Gajemanidu, means kind, loving spirit. But in our creation story also talks about, we have this understanding of life, and all of that is included in there. And so that's kind of the best way, to be able to explain it and, to be able to share some of that. Gajep.
Steve?
Paul is here.
We have one more question here. When you were talking about knowledge, I think you mentioned something about understanding before birth.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what that is, and also a little more about the book you were describing on the 7 grandfather teachings.
Okay. So in our creation story again, and this is another one, truth by faith, is that we believe, and as many others, that you're spirit before you're human. And in our story, and what we believe is that we choose our parents, that we are spirit beings, and I always think of it like we're in the spirit realm, and we're looking, and then we see someone, and we're like, yep, that's my parents, that's who I want, and that we then choose to be born. That's the way, and again, that's kind of that truth by faith and that knowledge. We believe that we're also born with certain things. We come in from the spirit realm to this physical place, having already things that we know and understand. So that's when we refer to that. That's what we're talking about. And then, I shared a little bit about, the one of our teachers that, wrote and allowed Paul and I to share the 7 grandfather teachings, but he wrote a book called the Mishomis book, and it talks a lot about our way of life, and it's written as a children's story, taught by a grandfather, like he's speaking to his grandchildren, and that's the story, that's the book, and it shares a lot about that in it. So. I keep turning it off and on.
There's one over here.
Good morning.
JoAnne, I think you're a lawyer, is that right?
Excuse me?
Are you a lawyer? Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yeah.
And obviously, your mother had access to higher education, and essentially that was in the so-called white man's world or whatever, and I'm just wondering about the duality of the thought process, the knowledge, the way of life. It's all such a complex duality to me, it seems.
Yeah.
Could you speak to that?
Yeah. We talk about living in 2 worlds. The reason my mom told us education was important is because she said you have to understand what the non-native people are saying. She said because and this goes back to the treaty time, because our belief and our worldview is very different, and so she said we need people to go to school because they can speak the language and you understand what they're saying, and then you can come home and tell us, this is when they say this is what they mean. So, school was forced on her because she went to boarding school, but she also understood there was a need for education. So she told us she really encouraged us to go to school, but that was the reason why. So you learn, we talk about living in 2 worlds. We're able to go out and be in this way, but then when we're around Anishinaabe and we're living our life, it's a different, but we've had to learn how to do that. We're very good at being able to live within our environment, but that also means understanding our history and what happened, but also learning how to live in this world and then living at home as well. I'm going to have Paul share some words right now, and I'm not sure how much time we have left, but and I turned my phone off, so I was trying to behave. All right.
Good morning. I apologize. Excuse me for being late. I was downstate and got home late, about 1 o'clock this morning. And I set my alarm, but I didn't notice I was setting it for PM. And then the traffic's crazy over there, on Division Street there. So, oh my God. Time I get there, it'll be over with. But I was going back to, reminds me of a story of when we choose our parents. My granddaughter, she was 3 years old. She's 19 now, but when she was 3 years old, I was washing dishes, and she asked if she could help me. I said, okay. I said, you can put them on the rack when I get done washing them, rinsing them. So I'd hand them to her, and we was doing dishes, and she says, Papa, did you know I chose you to be my papa? I said, really? He goes, yeah. She goes, I liked you and I liked your son. And she says, so I wanted to come and to your son and be his daughter. I said, really? She goes, yeah. She goes, I said, when did you do this? She goes, when I was in heaven. And she was 3 years old. And I said, well, I'm glad you chose us. She said, me too. I said, what took you so long? She goes, I had to wait until my dad grew up. I said, oh. So, that just, to me told me, verified that, our story was true, how we choose our parents. And, so it's things like that, happen that to have us understand, that these things are true. And, and sometimes, people would say, why, well, my parents weren't that great. But they don't realize when they choose, it's like they see the spirit of that person and not how it is in the physical world. So when they're in their spirit form, they're the most beautiful person, spirit that you can be, So it's like, when you're still in that other spiritual realm before you come here, being with the Creator, and you're still before you come here, so you're that beautiful spirit. So that's the, just remind me of when I'm talking about choosing our parents.
Paul, that is a fascinating story, and thank you for sharing it with us. Do you have any sense of how frequent it is that people remember making that choice?
No, I don't know. I mean, at that age, they're still traveling back and forth. They haven't completely come into this realm yet, so they're still part in that spiritual realm in here. I had my mother passed away from diabetes, and one of my grandsons never got to know her. And we had this old DVD, and we put it in, and we was watching it. It was a family reunion, and my grandson, he was 4 years old. His name is Gagakshe, and we was watching this, and he said, I know her. I said, who? He goes, that woman right there. I said, you do? He goes, yeah. He goes, she comes to me all the time in my dreams. I said, you know who that is? I said, that's your great-grandmother. I said, that's my mom. And he goes, really? And I said, he goes, yeah. She goes, she's always talking to me in my dream. So, those things happen. And we're told that, when our people die and they go to, heaven or wherever, they go to that spiritual realm where we come from, they go to a place that they can help us more than they ever could in this world. And, I'm reminded of a time, it was, I don't know, some years after my mother passed away. It must have been maybe 5 years or so like that. And one day I was just at home, and I had this overwhelming of grief, and I was sitting there crying. And I'm trying to figure out, why am I crying so much? Why am I crying? And I couldn't think of it. And I just kept crying, and I said, hey, I'm a grown man. Why am I sitting here crying for no reason? But I just couldn't stop crying, and I was crying. And after a few hours of crying, I think almost half the day went by and I was still crying. And then I realized what I was crying about is that I missed my mom. And I was thinking, why would I, I'm a grown man, I shouldn't be missing my mom, and thinking of this. But, then I was thinking, why am I missing her so much? And I found out that, to myself, I was thinking, I miss her just saying, you're doing a good job, son. And to me, and I began to cry more because I knew I'd never hear those words again. And I was just overwhelmed with grief. And then that night when I went to sleep, my mom came to me and I sat up. She was sitting on the bed and I sat up and I was laying kind of on my elbow and I was laying looking at her. And I remember looking at her and she had both of her legs. She had lost one of her legs, amputee from diabetes. And she sort of just tapped me on the side of my thigh and she said, you're doing a good job, son. And when I looked at her hand and I went to look up, she was gone. But the thing was, I didn't wake up, I was already awake. And I didn't realize this, and I was thinking, so I got up and I went by our front door. We kept this bowl of tobacco, so I went and put some tobacco down. And I went back to sleep, and then the next morning I started thinking about it. And I remembered, I said, I don't remember waking up. So I must have been awake when this happened. So, my mom seeing how heavy that burden was on me, she came to lift it. Once she told me, she sat there and tapped me and she said, you're doing a good job, son. All that heaviness went away, and it was just like I needed that. And she knew that from that spiritual realm, so she came to help me.
Anybody other questions? Yeah.
One of the things that you become aware of as you visit around and become aware of our neighbors, our coexistence, is the strength of this belief of the spiritual sense of life with the Native American cultures. And in our culture, we tend to lose some of that. Spirituality means something a little less profound than I'm hearing this morning. And one example of that I've always wondered about is the stories that I've read of hunters, Native American hunters, who always thank the animal that they have killed for their lives, to give it to themselves. And I've always said to myself, that's a great story. Can you tell me how it goes beyond being a story? Is it really true? When you folks go fishing, do you have that sense of gratitude and stop with a moment of, and I've heard from our perspective that without that, one would just be murder. You're killing an animal. But in your folks, it's different. Whatever you can say about that.
Okay. I'll speak first and then let Paul respond as well. So again, as I talked about our way of life, and I alluded to the creation story, everything else was placed in order, and we as human beings were last. So for us, our relationship to creation and why we remember and honor everything is because it was all placed there for us. And so it is why we as Anishinaabe then only take what we need, but we always give before we take. And that's that relationship, because they were the ones who offered themselves, the plants, the food, the medicine, the animals that we could eat. the water to give us life. And so we have, as Anishinaabe, have never forgotten that and understand that we have a relationship, and our part is to take care of, but also they give us life and give us food, so you have to give to receive. And so in our way, that's how we believe and understand all of that.
I was taught that when you enter into the bush, you always give offering before you go in there, because you're entering in. We look at it that when you're going into the woods or the forest, you're entering somebody's home, eh? It's not ours. So we offer that, our sema, our tobacco, because we're entering into their home, asking for forgiveness to come in there, but we have a need. And so we put our tobacco down before we go into the woods. And whether we're gathering medicine or if we're hunting, if we're gathering medicine, we speak to that medicine plant. We ask forgiveness from that plant for taking it, but we have a need for this medicine. And we ask forgiveness for its relatives there and all the relatives that live around, but we have a need for this medicine for healing. And we tell it what we're using it. And we ask for only the good medicine. Because I was told that there's all this medicine that grows out in the forest. And there's medicine for you and medicine for somebody else. It's like being at home in your medicine cabinet. There's medicine in the medicine cabinet. Some medicine's for you, some medicine's for somebody else. So you always ask for that good medicine. Otherwise, you may get somebody else's medicine and it doesn't work for you. Or it makes you sick. So you always ask them to say, the elders used to say, you ask for that good medicine for you. And then that's what, and then you put that tobacco down for that plant, or, and then you address the rest of the relatives that live around there, all the things that live there, and you talk to them and ask them forgiveness for taking this from their family, because it's all family oriented. And when you do that, then you speak to all of them, then you have the right to take that. And same with hunting, you're asking that when you go in there, you're asking to take that life. Let it, be merciful. But we have a need. We need to eat this food. So forgive us for taking it, but we have that need. And you address that, then that way whatever you're hunting gives itself. And it's a quick death for that animal, and it's not something where you shoot it and it runs off and you never find it. A lot of hunters do that because they're not asking in a proper way for that.
Well, I know from visiting the medicine wheel at the Botanic Garden that the 7 grandfathers are all each associated with an animal or a being. And I wonder what we can learn about those virtues from associating them with an animal. If you could just give us some examples of that.
So we had a local artist, Rick Yannett, was the one that designed and did the paintings, and then had a couple people working on the language, with him on that. So, as we talked about, we have our clan system, and those are animals. That it is the way we governed ourselves. It's for each one of us, we have our clan. That's a relationship that we carry, and there's attributes of that are within us based on that. But there are animals in those that spoke up for us or represent. It's the things they represent. And what Paul was saying is that we as Anishinaabe study and understand nature and the connection. So those attributes of those animals are the things that we look to. And so when he did the paintings with that for him and for the community, like his family, that's how they associated that. The animal that represented that teaching of the 7 grandfathers comes from the stories, traditions, and the understanding. So for us, that we as Anishinaabe love the eagle, the eagle represents, and it's a part that happened where he was looking for those Anishinaabe who are still doing ceremony. And he is one of the workers and close to our creator, Gajemanidu. And so that eagle, those attributes then of the eagle clan, that understanding. So those are the relationships that we carry with the various different animals.
Yes, I'm Kakagakshe Dudem. I'm of the Raven clan. And in being of the Raven clan, I observe things. I look at things before I speak, see what's going on. And the raven it's up in the trees and it's always looking. It gives notice when something's not right or something's wrong. And as that my clan, that's my duty. I watch, and then when something's not right, I try to intervene to correct it or let it know it's not going in the right way. So that's also going back to the seven grandfather teachings of bravery. It's not going into battle, but it's standing up when nobody else will stand up. I'll tell you a quick story. I was in Washington doing this program, and they were with elders, and they had this young woman. She was probably 15, serving. But the only way she could serve, she had to come in the middle, and the way the room was set up, she had to come in the middle of everybody and give them water or whatever, coffee. And one of the women said, "You're in my way, I'm trying to talk, would you get out of the way?" And that young girl, I could see the expression on her face. She was humiliated and shamed. And she got up and went into the kitchen, but the only way out of the kitchen was out the window. So I got up and I went out the door and I ran around to the side of that window, and she climbed out and dropped down. And she looked at me and she said, "How'd you know I was going to go out the window?" I said, "I seen the expression on her face." I said, "How humiliated you was." I said, "This was the only escape route. So I knew you was going to take that." And she says, if that's what an elder is, she goes, "I don't want to become one." I said, "No, that's not what an elder is." I said, "These are just older people trying to learn about what elders are." I said, "But I will correct this." I said, "Before the day's over, they'll come and apologize to you." So I went back in there and I sat and I said, "Excuse me," I said, "I hate to interrupt your conversation here." I said, "But did anybody notice what happened here just a little while ago?" And they said, "No, what happened?" I said, "There was a young girl in here, young woman, who was serving you, and you humiliated her, and none of you spoke up about it." I said, and she left, and she went out that window. I said, "She said that she doesn't want to become an elder." I said, "You're supposed to be elders and practice that." And I said, "There's elders and olders." I said, "Don't become an older." And so that's part of that teaching of using bravery, to be able to stand up when nobody else is going to speak. I could have let that go, and that young girl could have been always wounded the rest of her life with that thought. And I said, "You guys need to correct this. However you do it, but it needs to be corrected with her." So before the day was gone, she comes skipping up to me and she said, "Uncle Paul, guess what?" I said, "What?" She goes, "Those elders came and apologized to me." I said, "Well, that's good." And she was just floating because, they corrected that. And she's seen a different side of that. So, that's part of that teaching. And being honest with them and tell them the truth, but bringing the truth out that it's not going to offend anybody. Using these teachings, always use those teachings in a respectful way. So I had to show them what they did, but not humiliate them at the same time. But also, crack their little whip.
Is there another question? Thank you. Oh, wait a minute. Charles.
I've long wondered about the use of the tobacco. Why tobacco? Where did that come from?
So originally, it wasn't the commercial tobacco you see today. So, but we called it sema, but it was some original plants that make up that sema. And it goes back to when our uncle, I had talked about him earlier, Anishinaabe, but then our uncle Wawanabuju. And when he first came and lowered on the earth, he said it was so beautiful that he didn't want to disturb anything, that he was very careful the way that he walked upon the earth. And so the creator, Gije Manidu, gave him instructions, but also gave him that and told him how to use it. And so that is why we as Anishinaabe, we use it. Like I talked about that giving and taking. Whenever we're asking someone, if I'm going to ask you to do something for me, I'm going to offer you that sema. That we still use it today in our prayers, but we will use the different, more natural tobacco sema. But then there's also a time we use the original that we received. So. Yeah, and and the reason we used the more natural tobacco was because when our life was disrupted and we were no longer able to go and gather, we had to adapt to the environment, and so that was what we used.
Well, thank you so much for coming and explaining a little bit to us. We really appreciate it. And JoAnne told me that she's going to be teaching a class at NMC in the fall or in the spring. In the fall. Yeah, so keep that in mind as well. Okay, so Anne Marie has another song for us.
Before we release our flame, would you please join me in body or in spirit in singing 1057, Go Lift It Up.
Two announcements. Today and next Sunday, Charles Brackett, raise your hand, okay, is taking photos for the directory at the end of the hall. Get your picture taken to get in it, in the new directory. Second announcement, another UUCGT picnic on July 20th at Sailor Park. More information was in the flash. And the last one, July 28th and August 4th, Tony Vargas, Reverend Beth Marshall's husband, will present Under Siege, which is a two-part series from 8:30 to 10:15 in the sanctuary. And the information is posted on the front door or on the UUCGT calendar on our website. So those are our announcements. So those of you who are visitors, please, well, everybody go and get some coffee, but take a yellow cup so that we know you're a visitor and we can talk to you, okay? Thank you.